Yesterday I just kind of took the
herself.
day off. I kept my kids. Yeah, I kept my kids out of school and just hung out with them all day.
Nice.
And we actually took the time to talk a lot about the fact that we had just legalized marijuana and how important it is to me that they don't do marijuana as children. And so I felt the responsible thing to do as a parent was to give them that drug education right off the bat on day one and explain to them the consequences. And I think that's something, when you have 4 kids as a mom and you're looking at, something really big that you just, were very involved with, I think it's time to be the responsible parent and have the talk.
Robin, just because you've
that's what we did yesterday.
Nice.
Robin, I think that's a fascinating story. I appreciate you sharing. I think that this is an important conversation that needs to take place about how we discuss this now moving forward. I mean, that's one that I think is not in dispute of the appropriate way to go about it. I'm more curious if you would share with us what your kid's age and then what their response was as you discussed it with them. Was it like, Mom, we know, or
yeah, so
but I'm just kind of curious.
I have an 18-year-old. Yeah, I have an 18-year-old son. I have twin daughters that are 15, and my youngest is 13. And they already are familiar with medical marijuana, and they've come in contact with, when I was working on the MMFLA edibles bills, they came in contact with a lot of the pediatric kids and, people with cancer and HIV. And so they're very familiar, that cannabis is medicine and have a pretty good understanding of that and kind of a respect for it being medicine. And that kind of worked really well. They're like, hey, we're not sick. We don't need marijuana. It wasn't as taboo to them, and it wasn't something that we couldn't talk about. So I think that in itself has helped the situation immensely. But I think for this purpose is now that we're saying this is recreational, I felt it was important to explain things to them like it's for adults 21 and over. It's not a healthy thing for kids who are in school and trying to learn. Who I'm not going to lie to my kids. I'm not going to tell them it's going to cause brain damage because I don't believe there's any science to back that up. But I am going to tell them that it might make them fall behind in school. It will not help them with sports. That they should wait till they're, older when their brains are more developed, all of that. But I think more importantly, the driving piece, that if you, smoke marijuana and you're a minor and you get pulled over and there's even metabolites in your system, you have no defense. And, that means you lose your driver's license. If you get into a car accident, you could get in legal trouble. I think those are really important things to talk about the consequences. And, what can happen if you get caught with it at school, if you're riding a car with your friends and they have it, you're going to get blamed for just being in the car. So I think it's really important to lay out what the law is and make sure that the kids understand this is not a free-for-all and there are serious consequences.
Right, and I think what you said...
And when you arm kids with the truth, they're pretty good at making good decisions.
Right. But, what you just said was that is the law in Michigan as it was before legalization, and that's the law in Michigan after legalization. Nothing about adult recreational use is intended to effectuate...
That's not completely true. So
well, listen, I'm saying that the conversation, if you're going to discuss what just happened, why is everyone so happy, what does that mean? It's a discussion that's like alcohol.
No, absolutely.
You don't want to get involved. It's not for you.
Right.
This is
it's for adults, 21
These
and
are
over.
conversations you have with children about many different issues. This is one of them.
Right, and I just wanted to make this point. I know that, and this is just, Robin, I like everything you said, and I think these are the conversations. I saw somebody talking about how if it's not, what's the other one? If it's not DARE or like one of the other school anti-drug.
Courage.
Whatever.
Chippewa.
But they were already there talking how bad marijuana was at the school. Now, my initial response was, they lost. They don't get to decide what it's like anymore, blah, blah. But then I realized, look, these are kids at school. It's not the right response. But I don't think, as you said, we should be lying to them, right? You're not going to tell them it causes brain cancer. Right. But I think they also know, like there's a line of like, the nonsense. I think they're more adept and they have access to more information than we did as kids, right? Like if we were told something that, it caused man boobs, as it's been told, it's something that's going to resonate, right? I mean, whatever. So
I didn't have WebMD to look up man boobs.
Gynecomastia.
I got
to your point about the DARE program, I don't believe the DARE program to be effective at all. And that's why, I'm making the point that it really needs to be the parents to have that conversation.
The DARE program,
but we don't need the misinformation by DARE, which sets off.
And that's why the DARE program is not effective. Is these kids aren't idiots, and if you lie to them once,
And it's the whole thing with marijuana, like the idea or cannabis. The idea that the government's doing this to people makes people crazy. The fact you're stealing their property because this makes people crazy. And same thing, like it's going to have the same reaction if you're, passing on misinformation, abusing this idea, lying, propagating falsities of danger when they know it's not. You know what I mean? I just think, I like to believe.
That's exactly what I think that's exactly what our opposition got wrong. They ran a campaign based on lies and fear and scare tactics. And, just like kids, they're going to rebel when they're lied to and given misinformation. So did the voters. I mean, the voters saw right through that. And so they actually did us a favor by lying so much because, they didn't even come up with one good solid argument that was believable in any way, shape, or form. And that actually helped us.
Robin, you didn't think the insurance rates going up for drivers because of cannabis, you didn't think that was credible?
I didn't think it was effective at all because it's not true.
Me neither. I thought people just laughed at it.
Well, it was just they knew it was a new allegation, and they knew there'd be no data to back it up, but that no one had the time to do so.
But we did have a similar experience when they repealed the helmet law, right? And everybody said the sky's falling, your insurance rates are going to go up. Yeah. It never materialized. So when people hear someone crying wolf a second time, they're not likely to buy it.
Yeah.
Right.
There was a tremendous amount. I mean, it's interesting, I think, because there's so much misinformation that has led the prohibition of cannabis, right? I mean, the whole thing's based on a lie. We all admit that. And the Schaefer report would say otherwise. But for all these years, there's been this integration, these falsities into our culture. And here we are, however many years into it, on the cusp of it, and they go to, just ignorance. Like ignorance was their voice. They opened their mouth and stupidity came out of it. It was, it was nice. And the same thing with the Nestle campaign, that dangerous, it just shows you like that.
I really liked that moniker.
I thought that was good.
She
embraced it.
In fact, I liked it a lot. In fact, I was sending her all of these, Michael Jackson dangerous YouTube videos and, and all of that. And it really just made me want to vote for her more.
We noticed.
In fact, I think one of the most exciting things about this election for me was that my son turned 18 October 1st, and he is the president of our local Gay Straight Alliance. And so he really identified with Dana and saw like a huge opportunity to, have an opportunity that would, someone who would defend his rights and gay marriage and all of those things that are so important to him compared to Bill Schuette, who would absolutely never defend someone like my son. And so he registered to vote, and we went together to vote, and sat next to each other as we voted, and just the smile on his face as he checked the box for Dana. It's really important to him, and that was a really heartwarming moment. He did also vote for Prop 1, of course, but it was a really exciting time to cast my vote with my son being his first chance to vote.
That is nice, and the fact that vote meant so much to you and it meant so much to him, that's a nice.
It did, yeah.
And of course, you told him until he's 21 to be very careful and low key with his pot.
25, Jimmy.
He's not he's not a kid that likes to experiment a lot, and so I haven't not really running into that problem with him, and he cares a lot about his health, and I think that, he's really looking forward to college right now, and that's what his priorities are.
All right. No, that's awesome. I'm glad that you got a chance to vote. Just made it. Now, for people whose subsequent birthdays around voting time, they would be able to register right up until the day of voting. After now, we just passed Prop 3,
right.
But he made it under the wire of the month before that we had to be registered. So,
yeah. Well, what was interesting was I wasn't really sure what I thought about Prop 3, and then Alex was talking to one of his friends who was also 18 about voting and how excited that he was that she was going to be able to vote. And she said, "Oh, I didn't register. I didn't know I needed to register." And I said, "Well, your parents didn't tell you to register." And she said, "No, my parents don't vote." She was so disappointed. And right then I knew I'm voting for Prop 3. So,
right, same-day registrations as part of Prop 3 would have solved that problem.
Yep.
That's right.
Prop 3's
Prop
so
3's
many
good.
different advantages that proposal offered. Really, I'm glad that all three of the proposals passed.
Man, gerrymandering, that's
huge.
That is a great one.
It's going to change everything.
I like the fact that two of those particular proposals that passed were constitutional amendments, and typically in Michigan we do not support
very
constitutional
difficult.
Yeah,
amendments.
they got support from everybody.
Overwhelmingly.
There's 60 and 70%, something like
It's
that.
clearly bipartisan support. People wanted the reform and across the board want people to have the right to vote and have their vote count in a meaningful way.
And I think that's reflected in the main candidates that won with Gretchen and with Dana, and with down-ticket Dems that we're trying to get change going on there too. But I think those props benefited from having a good election for them to be up on. Because as we saw 5 constitutional amendments be defeated, I believe it was in 2014 or 2012. Yeah. So
we got Rob in the front. She give us her perspective of how things may play out from the. Just a perspective. We can go around the room. Everyone knows. Dana, has discussed this as well. I was looking at. We actually have a case in Allegan County. The prosecutor stepped forward and said this guy who had a dispensary, and Dan Groh was the attorney, I think.
Oh, that's Chris Bomber Martinez, my good friend.
Your friend, right? Mm-hmm. Bruce Block was interviewed, but I think it's Dan Groh's case. He'd been arrested like 10 times over the last 10 years, something like that. Crazy. But he showed up the day after legalization. 6-count delivery for, I think, he had alleged dispensary or whatever. Dismissed. I'm looking right here at the Kent County prosecutor. Somebody you'd rarely think would be. They're going to. They clarified their stance. There are no longer any pending possession or use cases, which are not probably allowed. They're going to dismiss and no longer prosecute. If you're under 21, they're going to prosecute them. If you're driving, they're going to prosecute them. And if they're felonies, they're going to prosecute them. But they're going to be. If they're driving, they're going to look at them. They say to see if you're impaired. These are his quotes, but. He's taking a position, and seemingly acknowledging the aspects of the act that are supposed to be. I don't necessarily agree because the amounts could be theoretically amounts under circumstances that would fall, in legalization protections. Or if it applied, it doesn't apply retroactively. There's no effect of that. But if he's applying it now to pending cases, when it's put into effect.
That's impressive. Not only that, he's doing it without being pushed by a citizens group or without being commanded by city council to do this. He's doing it on his own prerogative. I think that itself is kind of extraordinary.
Well, they got to do something, and they got to act in some way. I think so. He wants to be in the lead and try to have some direction. Robin, I mean, I can tell you I don't want to talk about it. What do you think is going to? Do you think that there's going to be consistency in this regard? Do you think some of these other, will there be a consistent action by prosecutors across the state, or do you think it'll be the type of disparity of treatment that kind of took place with the MMMA?
I do think that there could be some trouble with, enforcement and maybe county by county. Different prosecutors may do different things, but I'm hopeful that when Dana takes office that she'll be able to help, clarify when it's appropriate to prosecute and when it's not. And, maybe even, she says she's the people's attorney. So, if a rogue prosecutor goes against somebody that was, should have been covered under the law, I'd be willing to bet that Dana might be pretty helpful in a situation like that. And so